All right, hey there, guys. It's Pineapple. It's really early in the morning, and obviously, I want to talk about this week's chapter spoilers for My Hero Academia, chapter 331. And I thought, for some videos, I might as well do face cam, right? Like, I might as well show myself a little bit, right? Why am I looking all over the place? For some videos, I might as well show myself a little bit, right? And why not these? But let's start talking about the chapter, and we're going to start right off at the beginning, where it says, the chapter begins with Star being thrown backwards by the impact of the explosion. She says she doesn't understand why Shigaraki's hair suddenly grew, and Shigaraki says he now understands how New Order works. And by the way, I have seen a couple, images from the chapter, and it is just what is going on, right? Like, if this whole thing wasn't already like a CyberConnect 2 boss battle going on with Star surfing on top of stealth bombers and everything, the way that it's kind of ascended now in this chapter, I think in a big way, is going to be a major escalation as far as how are they going to animate this, just in terms of how fights in My Hero Academia have been fought so far. I don't think we have anything that is on the level of this. It's gotten to a crazy new point. Now, Shigaraki says that even though she's the strongest, her quirk still has some limits. He noticed that there's a limit on her super strength, because if there wasn't, he would have been killed with a single punch. Now, this is something that we touched on in the last video, if you remember. We talked about all sorts of things that could be weaknesses to Star and Stripe's quirk. And I'm actually really thankful that I did end up putting that video out, because at first I wasn't going to, because of the recording got lost and everything. But now, a lot of stuff in this chapter actually lines up with my last upload, or my last video about Shigaraki and Star and Stripe, so it kind of really works out in a really nice way. In the last video, I said something about, obviously there are limits, and there's a metaphysical or a physical limit that she's going to reach, because she can't just say, I am God, and win every fight, right? It's not that simple. So there are limits and rules onto, what she can do, and it seems like in this fight now, Shigaraki is starting to kind of figure that out. Also, he says that she might as well have just said, if someone touches the air in that certain area, that person dies instantly. Since this wasn't the case, he imagines that there's a limit to any kind of rule imposed, which is, 100% correct, because again, she can't just set instant win conditions, right? For some people that she fights, certain things that she does would be an instant win condition. You could see how it'd be really scary. But to someone like Shigaraki, who has so many just options that is in his arsenal and so many things he can do, it's not quite as scary. He then says that the limitation for using it on living beings must be the name calling part, which, if you remember from last video, was exactly what we were suggesting, right? That her having to call a person by their name or that kind of would be an issue. And people were like, well, she called Air. Air doesn't have a name. And okay, I guess, but I feel like with a person, you have to know their real name, right? And that lack of information that she has, it really is kind of a weakness that she has in this fight, and that gets addressed here, obviously, with Shigaraki being you not really knowing my name is probably one limitation, and we're gonna see how she tries to deal with that in a second, but I'm really glad that ended up getting brought up in the chapter. Shigaraki says that, for example, the last order didn't work because she assumed that he was Tomura Shigaraki, when in reality, he's in an ambiguous state between Shigaraki, All For One, and even Tenko Shimura. And I hope that is how it's stated in the chapter, which is why it's kind of interesting to talk about these spoilers sometimes. If that is how it's kept in the chapter, I really like that distinction between Shigaraki Tomura and Tenko Shimura as being very different, right? Because a lot of people will say that, Shigaraki has kind of let go of the Tenko personality and all this stuff. I've been a big fighter for saying that Tenko is still in there. It's a kid who wants to be a hero. It's someone who hasn't completely let go of how he felt when he saw Nana's photo, right? So having Tenko Shimura mention my name instead of just Shigaraki and All For One, and then completely disregarding that past personality, I think is very meaningful. And if you remember from last video, I've been saying for a while, especially that I'm just going to be calling him Tenko Shimura from now on, unless he comes up with an entirely different name. One of the pilots asks Star once again what they're going to do, since neither New Order or the lasers worked. She then asks him to send a message to Commander Agbar. The pilot seems to understand what this means, and asks if this is really the best thing to do. Star and Stripe says that Shigaraki is no longer just an enemy of Japan. He's a threat on a global scale. She needs to kill him right now, in her opinion. Now, one thing that I have in my notes before I talk about just my opinion on, of course, the American hero wants to drop bombs on people. Commander Agbar is probably a reference to Admiral Akbar from the Star Wars movies. Obviously, he's pretty well known for being placed into a trap by the Imperial Army by the Sith, and fighting his way out of it by leading his fleet to victory, partially through bombarding the hell out of an enemy in order to lower their defenses for other interceptors to come in along with Lando and the others to swoop in and destroy the fleet and the Death Star's reactors and stuff. I just point that out because obviously it's a little interesting how that lines up with Star heading to Japan and instantly being caught in a trap by All For One and Shigaraki, who are both trying to steal her quirk, obviously. Just like Akbar, in that situation, her response is to lead her fleet to victory, right? And to just keep fighting and to keep bombarding Shigaraki until she can get his defenses down for, for another fleet to come in and pretty much swoop down and take him out with their artillery. And I just thought it was really clever for Horikoshi to throw that really obvious reference back to Admiral Akbar, who I think actually does become a commander at some point in Star Wars, right? Commander Akbar. Just throwing that in there. I thought that was really fun. And yeah, can we talk about how, of course, the #1 American hero is like 5 minutes after meeting Shigaraki is like, no, I'm not doing this. Just drop him on him. Just send them. Send the intercontinental whatever you have. Just send it. This villain, this super-powered villain that we have to deal with in Japan, just send them. Just send all of them. Just send the whole artillery. Like, I'm not dealing with this. And it's really insane how she's just like, yeah, I'll die. Like, I guess we're all dead. I guess we'll all just die. Whatever. We can't beat Shigaraki or whatever the hell, whatever your name is, guy. I guess we're just dead, you know? Bomb us, and I'll just go out. And it's just like, it kind of echoes what we were talking about in the predictions for this chapter, where I was saying that everyone here has a very nonchalant kind of attitude about dying, and that kind of echoes more of like when Mirko was saying, where you have to be ready to put your life on the line for the sake of the mission. But like, geez, the quickness that they were ready to just be like, all right, send the missiles, I guess we're gone. Like, whatever, just hold them down as long as you can. I thought was really interesting. So the pilot remembers back to the moment that he met Star. She says, from today on, I'm gonna take care of you all. Let's die together, bros. And then he gives an order for everyone else to back off. Kind of going with what I said last chapter about, it seemed like this group of people, like Star and these pilots, all train together to a certain extent and have like a greater bond. And that maybe in the past there's been situations where someone didn't really make it back. Now, as her quirk doesn't work on Shigaraki like we saw last chapter and his hair was growing and everything, she decides to just create a new order because she's like, this is not working. So instead of having one rule on herself and like another order or another rule on Shigaraki trying to use it on him, she just decides, let's do 2 rules, right? Like, let's not even necessarily 2 rules on herself, but in what I think has to be like the craziest, biggest feat, like low-key that we've seen in My Hero Academia, like this just takes it to a whole different place. Star says, the atmosphere will be solidified into a shape that is 100 times my size. And from that point on, we see a giant, like, it says in the spoilers a huge aura, but when you see the panel, it's really just like a giant stand, right? It's pretty much Star and Stripe is standing on a jet, right? And around her for 100 meters is like an atmospheric clone of Star and Stripe. Like, you just see like a giant Susanoo. Let's be honest, it's a giant Susanoo version of Star and Stripe. And then Star and Stripe starts beating the hell out of Shigaraki. I know that the people who are like, Horikoshi copies from Naruto are going to be going off. But it's great, I don't care. Because there's a moment in this where, oh man, they're even going to compare it to Indra's Arrow, aren't they? There's a moment in this where you just have Star beating the hell out of Shigaraki, like pummeling him with this giant atmospheric version of herself. There's like lasers, there's all sorts of crazy stuff. And you have this moment where she asks all the different like jets to shoot lasers into one place, like together. And then she grabs all of them with the atmospheric copy of herself and like slams it into Shigaraki, like Gandalf, you shall not pass, is it? Into Shigaraki, like into the ocean. It's just this ridiculous, like grabbing a laser just right, like I saw people saying on Twitter that it was like Zeus, right, like some Zeus stuff going on in My Hero Academia, and it really is. And that's why, like, when have we got into this godly battle section of My Hero Academia? Like, I know that we know the fight between All Might and All For One was definitely like a godly battle, and we have seen crazy fights, but this has gotten to like a weird God of War level that I was not expecting this fight to go to, but I'm really, really happy it did, because any really big fight that we have before Deku and Shigaraki's final fight is kind of just like hyping me up for Deku and Shigaraki's final fight, because obviously that has to be bigger than any fight in the series. So like any of these fights is kind of like, oh man, yeah, you're just making the last fight even better in my opinion. And yeah, also the spoilers note that apparently she has an attack called Fist Bump to the Earth, where she punches Shigaraki into the earth with a clone of herself that is so big. Well, I mean, not a clone, but, you know, the atmospheric version of herself that is so big that it's kind of like, hey, planet, you know what I mean? And that is What's happening? So it says that she knows since accumulating damage is not going to be enough to defeat him because he can heal himself, and she won't be able to find his real name out either. She's just going to have to beat him until pulp until whatever Commander Ackbar is sending gets there. So the spoilers from here go on to explain, you know, her doing various things with this giant atmospheric version of herself, like smacking and creating a giant, you know, impact that kind of sends Shigaraki going everywhere. The whole laser beam thing. I think the laser beam technique is called Unified Laser with Max Output Keranos? It's probably like a Greek thing. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. A lot of the technological stuff in My Hero is named after like Greek stuff or like stuff from you know, that section of our planet, and I just do not have the most experience pronouncing things, so I apologize. But from there, it seems like the pilots think everything is over after that massive laser strike and, you know, the giant kind of Indra's arrow weird technique that Star and Stripe did, but it's not. Star and Stripe even herself knows that this isn't the end, because she tells them that if this could get rid of Shigaraki, Endeavor would have already been able to take care of Shigaraki, which I guess kind of like should make some power scaler or, you know, people who are angry about Star and Stripe's power level being a little too high, a little happy, because she's literally saying that, like, even though I'm doing all of this, like all this that I did, this is something that Endeavor should be, like, not all with all this big spectacle, like, you know, a giant atmospheric version of Endeavor, but like all this that I'm doing is equal to like something Endeavor should be capable of doing, right? Like Endeavor nearly destroyed Shigaraki if it wasn't for All For One stepping out and like holding Shigaraki's body literally together somehow, right? Like he literally almost turned Shigaraki to dust. So her point kind of stands that, like, if it was just this, if it was just the ability to pretty much atomize somebody with an insane amount of energy, he would be gone already. Shigaraki is a little more tenacious than that, and All For One / Shigaraki is a little more tenacious than that. So really, she's telling them that all she can actually do here is hold him back. It's at this point in the chapter where she receives a call from Commander Ackbar that she mentioned earlier, and he says that her recklessness has crossed the line this time, and that the penalty will be even more severe than a revocation of her hero's license. So it sounds like her hero's license is gonna be revoked after this, so it doesn't seem like she's gonna be the #1 hero, and it sounds like he's even suggesting that she might face some sort of jail time or some sort of like actual severe punishment, and I wonder, like, how do you keep a person like Star and Stripe in jail, right? Like, if she doesn't want to go, I guess she would probably just hand herself in, but I feel like that would be a really interesting kind of like, I really like all this America stuff that we're getting, because there's just low-key setup for you to just get a whole other focus on America and like what happens when the #1 hero in America gets arrested for trying to do the right thing or something, but then it's kind of like other people agree that you probably shouldn't have. Why did you just think that you could bomb, like, you know, bring bombs to Japan or whatever you were trying to do? Like, why did you think you could just do that to attack a villain in the sky, even if no one else is going to get hurt and you're just planning on taking yourself out? Like, there's still red tape and all stuff that like cross and stuff. So I can imagine that that's going to be a huge bureaucratic nightmare, but I guess this is My Hero Academia, not my bureaucracy. I don't know. So she says that she doesn't care about her license getting revoked or anything like that, and asks Ackbar if he's finished the preparations. Ackbar confirms, and he says that he's already told Japan that they should be arriving soon. But of course, even the American commander here can't help himself, right? Because he's like, Star, you're too reckless, but you're too good. It's what makes this country great. And it's like, of course he can't just be like, hey, you shouldn't be calling these bombs. Instead, he's like, no, yeah, I mean, this kind of what, of course we're gonna do this, right? Like, this kind of what makes us great. And it's just like, well, on brand. And from then on, we pretty much close the chapter out with Star and Stripe saying, even All Might couldn't arrest this villain. It's your time to overcome him, Kathy. And that could be like, there's a nickname for the missile system or something like that. It could be her nickname for her giant atmospheric version, right? Like, it could be her real name, right? It's probably just Star and Stripe's real name, honestly. Like, now that I just thought about that, it's probably just her real name. And what am I talking about? It's definitely not a name for the missile system, because we actually did get that at the very end of the chapter. The last page, I believe, is us seeing a bunch of missiles on the way to America, or on the way to Japan, or on the way to Shigaraki to try to take them down. And it says that they're called the New Hypersonic Intercontinental Missiles, Tiamat. Now, if you remember, Tiamat is actually the name of a character from one of Horikoshi's last manga, called Barrage. You may have read it. And it's like the secondary main character who kind of looks just like Aizawa. So it's going to be interesting to see if that character actually does have any involvement in this series, because Horikoshi does like to work in his characters from other series. Even though it's kind of more like in a reference way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think any of the teachers from My Hero Academia who were in the zoo in his previous manga like ever reference that, really. I don't think it's like that connected. I just think he's reusing the characters. But if he does do that with Astro and Tiamat from Barrage, it's gonna be interesting to see like how that's used, because we have seen them in like a sketch or something for the volume 32 extras, and they haven't appeared yet. And just like a Mei Hatsume, who we know is also going to have some focus coming up soon, she hasn't appeared yet either. So it seems like we are going to get to the Tiamat stuff, but like, what's that going to be? What's that about? I said on a tweet on Twitter saying that it'd be cool if there was a hero who just completely had control of missiles and could like change their shape and reconstitute them and do all sorts of stuff. So maybe it's something like that. Maybe there's a literal hero named Tiamat who's coming for backup, or it's just a bunch of missiles, because we are America. So that has been the spoilers for chapter 331 of My Hero Academia. Yeah, it is a very America chapter, I'll tell you that. It's very, very America focused, just being a little ridiculous. But that's all. I'll see you guys later. It's Pineapple. Peace.